Welcome, everyone. This is episode, 3 now? In our series where we will be reading through and giving our live thoughts on the the current book that we're reading. Today we're doing a third installment on Plato's Republic, Book 1. So yeah, excited to continue this part of the series, or this series. Oof, good heavens!
All right. And with that, we'll pick up again with this large paragraph where Thrasymachus is about to go on a tirade a little bit, a rant against Plato. Because you fancy that the shepherd or neatherd fattens or tends the sheep or oxen with a view to their own good, and not to the good of himself or his master. And you further imagine that the rulers of states, if they are true rulers, never think of their subjects as sheep, and that they are not studying their own advantage day and night. Oh no, and so entirely astray are you in your ideas about the just and unjust, as not even to know that justice and the just are in reality another's good. That is to say, the interest of the ruler and stronger, and the loss of the subject and servant. And in justice, the opposite. For the unjust is lord over the truly simple and just. He is the stronger, and his subjects do what is for his interest, and minister to his happiness, which is very far from being their own. Consider further, most foolish Socrates, that the just is always a loser in comparison with the unjust. First of all, in private contracts, wherever the unjust is the partner of the just, you will find that, when the partnership is dissolved, the unjust man has always more and the just less. Secondly, in their dealings with the state, when there is an income tax, the just man will pay more and the unjust less on the same amount of income. And when there is anything to be received, the one gains nothing and the other much. Observe also what happens when they take an office. There is the just man neglecting his affairs and perhaps suffering other losses and getting nothing out of the public because he is just. Moreover, he is hated by his friends and acquaintance for refusing to serve them in unlawful ways. But all this is reversed in the case of the unjust man. I am speaking as before of injustice on a large scale, in which the advantage of the unjust is most apparent. And my meaning will be most clearly seen if we turn to that highest form of injustice, in which the criminal is the happiest of men, and the sufferers, or those who refuse to do injustice, are the most miserable. That is to say, tyranny, by which fraud and force takes away the property of others, not little by little, but wholesale, comprehending in one things sacred as well as profane, private and public, for which acts of wrong, if he were detected perpetrating any one of them singly, he would be punished and incur great disgrace. They who do such wrong in particular cases are called robbers of temples, and man-stealers, and burglars, and swindlers, and thieves. But when a man, besides taking away the money of the citizens, has made slaves of them, then instead of these names of reproach, he is termed happy and blessed, not only by the citizens, but by all who hear of his having achieved the consummation of injustice. For mankind censure injustice, fearing that they may be the victims of it, and not because they shrink from committing it. And thus, as I have shown, Socrates, injustice, when on a sufficient scale, has more strength and freedom and mastery than justice. And as I said at first, justice is the interest of the stronger, whereas injustice is a man's own profit and interest.
One section that I kind of want to focus on as we break for a second is, like, I guess the third to last sentence where he says, "For mankind censure injustice, fearing they may be the victims of it, not because they shrink from committing it." Um, this, I guess, worldview of Socrates is kind of interesting, in my opinion. The fact that he seems to think that, or have this Machiavellian sort of view of behavior, that people will do what they can to get ahead, regardless of their own or of other people's um, interests or I guess best interests, would be the most concise way to put it. Um,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on that, if you have any?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It I almost wonder if they're talking about the same ideas of justice. Like, does he call, the how does he say, the interest of the stronger? Does he call that justice because that is, what is seen as right, or because that is seen as, right for someone to do? Like,
Like the most
is he
advantageous
making a
thing
sort
to
of,
do, would you say?
yeah, but like, I wonder if maybe Socrates is aiming for a more absolute ideal of justice, and Thrasymachus is making a more practical, relative, sort of social claim of what justice would be considered. Like, maybe they're talking past each other a little bit, or, you know, putting two different ideas under the label of justice, and then they're describing each of those ideas as being separate.
That's a good point. I do think, or I do agree now that you mention it. Thrasymachus uh, has somewhat of a relativistic view of um, of justice or of morality. Um, that it's like what the individual sees as best for themselves, uh, which I kind of mentioned this before, comes in somewhat of a conflict with what might be best for another. Um, but yeah, that's a good, interesting, good point to bring up because I do think that that's important to note from a conversational point of view. Um, since in order to have a constructive conversation and to be able to come to some sort of mutual agreement or conclusion, uh, a sort of basis needs to be agreed upon first of where people are coming from or mutual
Hmm.
understanding of terms because like you're saying, Aristotle or Socrates, pardon, has more of a absolute view where Thrasymachus is more relativistic or on a person by person basis of what is quote unquote right.
Yeah, I would also say, because he says the subjects do what is for like the Lord's interest and minister to his happiness, which is very far from being their own. I don't think he's supposing it as being like a relative judgment because it's being like on a person by person basis, because it is definitely relative to whoever's in charge. And so it's being relative in the sense of not being like a, fundamental moral standard, like it's not an objective thing. So it's just relative to whoever's in charge at the time, which is interesting. So I think he would say that justice does not differ, between people within a society, but justice might differ between societies, at least in terms of who is the benefactor and what their best interests might be. But the general form of it is I think he would say the same. Like the pattern of those who have the power and are the rulers are the standard of justice according to what their interests are.
Definitely with the aspect of scale too, I would say.
Oh,
Because you're mentioning like just or he would sort of interpret justice to be uh, dependent on like who's in power and that it differs kind of on the interpersonal scale. And I would say that uh, like especially given like the last sentence where he mentions that uh, well, I guess I could be wrong because he in the last sentence he talks about how injustice or quote injustice when on a sufficient scale has more strength and freedom and mastery than justice. Um, so I guess I'm probably wrong in that case that that injustice or that either injustice or justice, depending on the scale, has more um, power or influential power, so to speak, than the alternative.
hmm. I think it differs our attitudes differ in scale, but not the, I guess, ethics of it. Like he gives some examples, individuals, like if an individual man, you know, is in a contract, when the contract is broken, he'll have the better dealing. And, when there's two people paying taxes, they'll have the better dealing, and so it's not that it's injustice always has the advantage in practical matters, is what he's claiming. It's just our attitude towards it is different depending on whether it's at the scale to be considered part of the top of the hierarchy or the bottom of power, I would say. So rulers and tyrants um, get sort of glorified while individual committers of injustice are condemned. Would you say that's accurate to what he's saying?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree, and thanks for the clarification. Um, I guess that you meant or now that you mentioned that, there seems to be somewhat of a, and I guess this would also be sort of system of government dependent of a democratic sort of angle to it, where if um, if the majority, or I guess if a plurality, so to speak, is enacting sufficiently or a sufficient amount of injustice or justice for that matter, any injustice or conversely justice would be sort of counterbalanced. Would you say that's an accurate extrapolation?
I didn't follow that.
Um, I guess I was thinking in terms uh, of like power scaling, or not necessarily power scaling by that name, but say there's a democratic sort of uh, majority rule type system of like 10 people, and say 7 people act unjustly and 3 people act justly, then uh, people would likely, in my by my estimation, be incentivized to act unjustly because that's what the system as a whole is doing,
Mm,
and then
yeah,
like
like if
the
this,
reverse
yeah,
would be true.
Hmm. Like when the system is broken and cheating, you might as well cheat to get advantage of it.
Yes.
Well, I think I would agree with that, but I think from the perspective of Thrasymachus, um, you said the opposite would also be true, but I don't think that would be, at least according to Thrasymachus's view, because he says that the unjust, get the better of the just.
Oh, so you're saying that he's saying, and I'm not saying that I disagree, but just I guess as a matter of comprehension and coming to a mutual understanding of the thing, uh, that any time that there's any injustice, the unjust are the ones that come out on top.
Um, hmm. Well, he's certainly saying that the unjust come out on top relative to the just. Like they always have the upper hand.
Which I guess is what I was getting
Hmm.
at. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that he's made any, if we could say what his claim would be for an unjust system as a whole, and whether injustice would still be the best in that case. If anything, if it was perceived to be um, against the interests of the rulers, which I guess by definition it would be if it's unjust, then I would think generally if there's an unjust ruler that you're going against, things aren't going to go well for you. But I don't know that he's necessarily made any claims about. I don't think he's made any claims about like a whole social system other than that the ruler is not censured for injustice. A tyrant's injustice is permissible. I think that's basically the only claim that he's made with regards to a social level, system, I guess.
For sure, and that's fair, I guess. Admittedly, I was kind of extrapolating and taking guesses based on what he has said. So, uh, uh, definitely, there's a chance that I'm uh, looking beyond the mark or just playing off the way off base.
Yeah.
So, I'll continue
Although,
unless you have
yeah.
any other
Well,
thoughts.
I would say just from saying that the unjust have the advantage of the just, I would say the logical conclusion of that is you ought to always be unjust. Because if the other person is just, then being unjust would give you the advantage. And if the other person is unjust, then being just would just put you at a disadvantage. So that is an interesting consequence, I guess, of his thinking.
Hmm. Sorry, I was just writing down some notes of ideas of what to name this episode. Um,
It would be like the prisoner's dilemma of justice,
the prisoner's
according to
dilemma,
Thrasymachus.
and
Thrasymachus's prisoner dilemma.
and have the picture of the person behind bars reaching for the bread instead of the key.
Hmm,
Y- y-
interesting.
Do you know what I'm referencing?
I don't,
Oh,
but that does sound
bread
like it
tastes
would pique interest.
better than key.
Hmm.
No. Okay.
No.
I'll read the next two paragraphs. The
Okay.
longer one and then the single sentence. Um,
Oh, yeah.
all right. He said. It continues. Thrasymachus, when he had thus spoken, having like a bathman deluged our ears with his words, had a mind to go away. Ugh, Thrasymachus, come on, man. But the company would not let him. They insisted that he would remain and defend his position, and I myself, uh, Socrates, added my own humble request that he would not leave us. Thrasymachus, I said to him, excellent man, appeal to emotion, eh? How suggestive are your remarks? And are you going to run away before you have fairly taught or learned whether they are true or not? Is the attempt to determine the way of life or the way of man's life so small a matter in your eyes to determine how life may be passed each other uh, sorry to determine how life may be passed each one of us in the greatest advantage? And do I differ from you, he said, as to the importance of this inquiry? Thoughts, comments, questions,
Hmm.
concerns?
I like that little statement. You're going to run away before you have fairly taught or learned whether they are true or not. Is the attempt to determine the way of man's life so small a matter in your eyes? To determine how life may be passed by each one of us to the greatest advantage. It's like an appeal to the importance of the conversation itself. It's like, hey, isn't this an important conversation?
And I think it also has somewhat of uh, a or aspects of moral philosophy as well. Kind of uh, indicating how Thrasymachus sees the individuals in the group, um, as well as seemingly not caring about or appearing not to care about how he's speaking in the matter. Um,
Hmm. Well, it sounds like he I don't know, he did his rant and he was ready to leave in the heat of the moment at least, but yeah, I guess we don't know why he's sticking around, whether it's more of an appeal to emotion or appeal to the social aspect or appeal to the importance of the conversation itself or what. But
Thrasymachus or Socrates.
Thrasymachus.
Mm. Yeah, because it seems like Thrasymachus is trying to just um, brain dump and get out of there. Uh, like he's just trying to vent in a way. Uh, and then
Hmm.
Socrates, or why do I keep wanting to say Socrates? Uh, um, yeah, Socrates is trying to get him to either, I guess, defend his point or defend why he's right, or to come to the right answer if he's wrong.
Hmm.
Shall we continue?
Yeah. So he's like, oh, do I, seem to not give it the same weight you do? Socrates says, You appear, rather, I replied, to have no care or thought about us, Thrasymachus, whether we live better or worse from not knowing what you say you know, is to you a matter of indifference. Prithee, friend, do not keep your knowledge to yourself. We are a large party, and any benefit which you confer upon us will be amply rewarded. For my own part, I openly declare that I am not convinced, and that I do not believe injustice to be more gainful than justice, even if uncontrolled and allowed to have free play. For, granting that there may be an unjust man who is able to commit injustice either by fraud or force, still this does not convince me of the superior advantage of injustice, and there may be others who are in the same predicament with myself. Perhaps we may be wrong. If so, you in your wisdom should convince us that we are mistaken in preferring justice to injustice. And how am I to convince you, he said, if you are not already convinced by what I have just said? What more can I do for you? Would you have me put the proof bodily into your souls? Sounds like he wants to have a little tussle.
And from those words alone, I feel like we could have an entire discussion on the history of epistemology, where I think, or I can't remember exactly where people used to think that the mind resided, but I think it was like it wasn't in the head. That's for sure.
Hmm. Well, I don't think he's claiming any specific anatomy, like I'm gonna hit you in a place. I think he's just saying, like, oh, you want me to beat the truth into you?
That's funny. Heaven forbid, I said, says Socrates.
Hmm.
That's funny. Heaven forbid, I said, I would only ask you to be consistent. Or if you change, change openly and let there be no deception. I think that's it. That's something that debaters should keep in mind all the time. Because uh, I feel like a lot of times uh, when there's debates, whether online or in person, um, especially as it relates to politics, as politics is very uh, seemingly central to, um, I guess, personal moral philosophy or how one carries themselves. I think this sentiment ought to be um, frequently emphasized because I think there's importance in defending your point accurately and appropriately, and then admitting where your, I guess, point of view might have uh, weaknesses. You know.
Yeah, it's like being honest and having intellectual integrity to stand by what you hold is true and stand by your changes of opinion if you believe them to be, you know, genuine and taking a better stance. Like he says,
Mhm.
let there be no deception.
Yeah. He continues. For I must remark, Thrasymachus, if you will recall what was previously said, that though you began by defining the pure physician in an exact sense, you did not observe a like exactness when speaking of the shepherd. You thought that the shepherd as a you thought that the shepherd as a shepherd tends to the sheep, not with a view to their own good, but like a mere diner or banqueter, with a view to the pleasures of the table, or again as a trader for sale in the market, and not as a shepherd. yet surely the art of the shepherd, or how the shepherd uh, performs his craft, is concerned only with the good of his subjects. He has only to provide the best for them, since the perfection of the art is already ensured whenever all the requirements of it are satisfied. And that was what I was saying just now about the ruler. I conceived that the art of the ruler, considered as ruler, whether in a state or in private life, uh, I would even expand that on a personal level uh, or an interpersonal level, could only regard the good of his flock or subjects, whereas you seem to think that the rulers in states, that is to say, true rulers, like being in authority.
Hmm.
I personally don't, uh, and this could be different for you, but I personally don't have much to say on this bit other than kind of pointing out Socrates pointing out his sort of double standard in uh,
Mhm.
seeing a physician in this example as fundamentally different in terms of justice and in
Mhm.
practice to the shepherd, where just and you kind of alluded to this, and we had a conversation earlier in this recording uh, to a sort of inconsistency or a double standard where uh, Thrasymachus seems to be advocating for a different kind of justice in one instance as opposed to another.
Think, nay, I am sure of it. Then why, in the case of lesser offices, do men never take them willingly without payment, unless under the idea that they govern for the advantage not of themselves, but of others? Let me ask you a question. Are not the several arts different, by reason of their each having a separate function? And, my dear illustrious friend, do say what you think, that we may make a little progress. Yes, that is the difference, he replied. And each art gives us a particular good and not merely a general one. Medicine, for example, gives us health, navigation, safety at sea, and so on. Yes, he said. And the art of payment has the special function of giving pay. But we do not confuse this with other arts, any more than the art of the pilot is to be confused with the art of medicine, because the health of the pilot may be improved by a sea voyage. You would not be inclined to say, would you, that navigation is the art of medicine, at least if we are to adopt your exact use of language? You ever thought of payment as the art of payment, Bryce?
it, it's it's kind of funny the way that he's speaking, but I think it's uh, indicative of what he's or useful for what he's getting at. If the person he's speaking with would cooperate. Um, anyways, uh, I like that he's.
I forgive you. I
I
think
like
it's
that
interesting.
he's. Oh, sorry, continue.
I was going to say, so Thrasymachus is saying, people do things for their own benefit when they're doing, arts, which is kind of a little bit opposite to what he was saying earlier, where, the art is, the practice for the best outcome either of, a different person or the artwork itself, like carpentry, would be to make good carpentry, to make good furniture or good tools or whatever it is. And, so the art of payment having the function of giving pay, that makes it sound like the art of payment would have the purpose of, benefiting the benefactor, paying properly, paying the right amount to the right person for their benefit. So whereas Thrasymachus is, saying people do things for their own benefit to get the benefit, like kind of claim it by force almost, like they try and get, say, money. It sounds like Socrates's view is more people, do things for the purpose of the activity, and they ought to, receive money as sort of a byproduct of, the art of payment. So it's not like people pursue money, they pursue activities to the end of the activity, and the end of payment is, like it's more about people receiving than people pursuing money.
Hmm.
I don't think I explained my idea very well, but I thought it was interesting. Like, payment is maybe something someone else would do and would do well. Like your boss would, pay you well. And so you're almost relying on the art of another to support you rather than pursuing an art for your material gain instead of the purpose of the art.
Which I wonder if this if the line of conversation that I'm gonna maybe attempt to follow would help would maybe help you elaborate on this, but I wonder if
Mm.
he's kind of using art in the sense of a discipline, so to speak, where there's certain principles that govern, say, and I realize this will be sort of uh, inaccurate, but say the principles of mathematics are different um, on a whole to say the principles of equestrian maybe, where like you wouldn't necessarily use the same tools in equestrian uh, or sailing as you would with math.
Mm. So the art of payment is less of an activity and more of economics.
Maybe. I wonder if what he means by like as he says the art of payment. Uh, it's like the art of medicine in his estimation. And feel free to push back if you think this is an inaccurate, I guess, comparison. But I wonder if he's comparing the art of medicine uh, as a providing medicine toward the health of um, an individual uh, to providing payment to an individual in as much as that payment is equivalent to uh, the service or the good or service having been provided. Do you follow?
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. So like the art of medicine is, to create health for the person in question, the patient. And the art of payment is, to give pay, you might say economic health to the person in question, but you're saying with the stipulation only as it is deserved, whereas maybe medicine is, maybe given only when payment is given, or maybe it's pro bono, and maybe, the art of medicine is given freely.
Um, that's a good, I guess, follow up question. I would say, uh, maybe to the health of the individual would be somewhat of a absolute, where um, somebody can't. Well, somebody would be sufficiently healthy according to different metrics like blood pressure, heart rate, uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, blood levels, things like that, where uh, there's somewhat of a moderation in what could be provided as medicine, like potassium or uh, epinephrine are good things to provide to individuals in certain circumstances, but uh, too much of either could be a detriment to the health of that person.
Mm. So then, by comparison, maybe the art of payment is to pay people what would be for their good. So to not overpay or underpay them. The art of payment is giving people what would do them well.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say that's a solid statement. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, I kind of want to bring up this question that he's posing. Uh, I guess more for emphasis than anything, to a point that I was trying to make earlier on uh, the difference of different arts. He says, "Would you, or you would not be inclined to say, would you, that navigation is the art of medicine? At least if we are to adopt your exact use of language." Um, I guess before I give my thoughts, do you have any, I guess, commentary on that line before I go into my
Um,
diatribe?
Art of payment. Choose the art of medicine. Uh, well, I guess I've been studying some math stuff lately, so I kind of got my math brain primed, and I'm thinking of it as like individual connections. There's like little nodes with arrows between them. There's the doer of an art and the recipient of an art, or the thing which the art influences. And so I'm thinking that his question is in essence saying that only one like arrow is relevant at a time. So even though the art of medicine would influence the pilot, and the pilot would, influence the art of navigation, that even though, a lot of things are relevant to a lot of other things, they're only talking about the most specific relevant things to the art in the moment. So like, the pilot only deals with the art of navigation, even though he has health and other things might be relevant to him. Like, I guess that's kind of what they're getting from in my.
Yeah, I would say that's an intriguing something that I'll have to follow up on. Uh, the So you're saying that in any given instance, there's uh, or he's sort of positing that there's one instance or one sort of art that primarily applies at any given time.
Or at least clarifying that in this discussion, when they refer to an art, they're only referring to one thing at a time.
Okay, fair. Okay. Okay, where were we? Or who read last? I forgot.
I
I
did.
was getting too involved in the conversation.
Yeah, so I read um, how the art of payment has a special function of giving pay, but navigation is not the art of medicine.
And Thrasymachus agrees.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, he goes on to say, or because a man is in good health, when he receives pay, you would not say that the art of payment is medicine. That's kind of beating that same
Mm,
horse, that same dead horse. Nor would you say that medicine is the art of receiving pay because the man takes fees. Hold on. He says, nor
hmm.
would you say that wow, that medicine is the art of receiving pay because man takes fees when he is engaged in healing. We've kind of gone over, um, I guess, prematurely gone over this. Uh,
Mm,
Engaged in healing? Certainly not. And we have admitted, I said, that the good of each art is simply confined to the art. Yes. Then, if there be any good which all artists have in common, which I would say another word to substitute for artists would be doers of the art have in common, that
hmm.
is to be attributed to something of which they all have the common use. True, he replied, which I think is uh, maybe a little bit unnecessary clarification of terms, but nevertheless, I respect it. Uh, True, he replied.
Mm.
And when an artist is benefited by receiving pay, the advantage is gained by an additional use of the art of pay, which is not the art professed by him. He gave a reluctant assent or agreement to this.
Huh.
Huh.
Yeah. So,
So he's kind of posing or proposing that uh, that in the case of the of arts or of actions that involve payment, there's necessarily two arts at least. The art of the action, which I feel weird phrasing it in this way, but I'm just trying to use the language that he is. So
hmm.
he's saying that there's like one, the art of the action, and two, the art of the payment being practiced in any art or action, whatever, that involves some sort of a financial transaction, or not necessarily financial, but any sort of a transaction for the art.
Yeah. It's like very carefully making a connection between the arts or the activities that people do and the immediate effects of those. So it's like when people do different things but get the same outcome, it's because that same outcome is coming from the same action, that being pay. And so he's really clarifying, like, hey, people don't do things to get money, they get paid to get money. Like, it is the reception of money that earns them things, it's not the doing of the arts. Like, those are two separate things.
So uh, let me, I guess, clarify to see if we're on the same page. So you're saying that he's distinguishing or trying to get Thrasymachus to admit that with any uh, art that involves some sort of uh, transfer of goods or services, there is necessarily a a transaction of some kind, and with that transaction, uh, the art is of the art is of receiving money, not necessarily the pursuit of money.
Sort of. I would say the only art that gets you money is the art of getting paid. And so he's making the distinction when you do something, you have an art that is your trade, your thing that you do, that does not get you money. The art of getting paid is the money. And so he's sort of creating that distinction. There's the things people do, albeit for money, and then there's the actual getting of the money. And so, since, like he says, if there be any good which all artists have in common, that is to be attributed of something which they all have the common use. So it's like, if you have a common effect, like getting money, then you must have a common cause of getting paid. So regardless of what you do, it's the getting paid that gives you the money. He's
Wild.
yeah,
I'll have to mull that over. Oof.
yeah, he's like, each thing you do has exactly like one outcome. It's like a very one-to-one way of thinking, which, I respect the rigorousness.
Very logic of you. Oh, that was terrible English. Very logician of you.
So yeah. So the artist is benefited by receiving the pay. Yeah. So yeah, people get money from getting paid, not from doing the art.
Interesting. So it
Then the
seems like.
pay.
Oh, continue.
Oh, I was gonna keep reading.
Oh, okay. I was just going to clarify. So, the common thread being that dealing justly involves doing a so-called art well, and the the art in this case being the giving of the just amount of money, or not necessarily money, the just amount of payment for some art.
Yeah, something like that. They haven't really given any criteria for like how much money people should receive, or whether it's more about their needs, or it's about like the economic value of their art, or uh how it really, like, they haven't really covered how it all ties in and what exactly they think. They're kind of getting the main thematic points clarified, I think, still.
Okay, that's fair. I guess I was trying to tie it all together, uh,
Yeah, yeah, that's a
and
good thing to do.
and
Um,
and make sense of it as like a whole. Uh,
yeah, because earlier they kind of made it sound like giving payment was sort of justice, or the art of justice was giving people what they are owed, was one of their earlier ideas, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't really
And
go into what people were owed, like what does it mean to, be owed a certain thing, to deserve a certain thing, but they're kind of going on their I guess intuition, their gut feelings, like enemies deserve violence and friends deserve, kindness and money, and that kind of intuition.
which in the future, I'd like to have a conversation on economics because that's one thing that uh, I'd like to, understand the supposed science of or the logic behind it because uh, in my uh, very menial light understanding of the topic, it seems somewhat arbitrary, which that could
Mm,
just be my own lack of an understanding of the thing giving me some sort of inaccurate interpretation of the art of economy, so to speak. Uh,
yeah. I do think it is a very very interesting discipline in terms of how it sort of balances objective and arbitrary sort of things. Like there's a lot that's measurable and there's a lot that's flexible, and it is interesting. Um, so I'm gonna keep reading,
fair. Go right
try and get a
ahead.
little bit further before we finish off.
Sure.
Maybe we could finish this line of thinking. So, uh, you get money from being paid, not from doing an art. Then the pay is not derived by the several artists from their respective arts. But the truth is that while the art of medicine gives health, and the art of the builder builds a house, another art attends them, which is the art of pay. The various arts may be doing their own business and benefiting that over which they preside, but would the artist receive any benefit from his art unless he were paid as well? I suppose not. But does he therefore confer no benefit when he works for nothing? Certainly he confers a benefit. Then now, Thrasymachus, there is no longer any doubt that neither arts nor governments provide for their own interests. But, as we were before saying, they rule and provide for the interests of their subjects, who are the weaker and not the stronger. To their good they attend, and not to the good of the superior. And this is the reason, my dear Thrasymachus, why, as I was just now saying, no one is willing to govern, because no one likes to take in hand the reformation of evils which are not his concern without remuneration. For in the execution of his work, and in giving his orders to another, the true artist does not regard his own interest, but always that of his subjects. And therefore, in order that rulers may be willing to rule, they must be paid in one of three modes of payment: money, or honor, or a penalty for refusing. Nice. Yeah. So I guess if we took a little page out of Thrasymachus's book and made a distinction of what it meant to truly be doing an art, then the government, you know, if they truly did the art of governing, would not be looking out for their own, payment or their own benefit. They would be, serving their subjects. Of course, I would maybe say that it is a highly contested point as to whether governments actually fulfill the role of the art of governing, or whether they, actually live up to that.
which I think is could be the point of conversation of a complete video in and of itself. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to go into my own, uh, I guess, modern day allegorical, or make this into an allegory for today.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. So,
'Cause-
no one wants to govern without getting paid because it's just another work, it's just another art to do that you don't get anything from in and of itself.
which again, I'll uh, put up the definition of the word you used just for a few seconds. Remuneration. Um, remuneration. Anyways, uh, but yeah, I think that's somewhat a uh, general sentiment of wanting to receive something for something you have given, uh,
Yeah.
which
Well, I think if we read a couple more paragraphs, then they're about to swap, kind of shift topics a little bit, so we could just finish up here these last couple paragraphs.
down to where he says Glaucon. Do you prefer? Fair. So he
I
said.
don't see where that is.
So you stopped off at certainly he confers a benefit, correct?
No, next after another paragraph.
Oh, so you
One of
three
three
modes
modes
of
of payment:
payment.
money or honor or penalty for refusing.
That's funny that he includes a penalty as a mode of payment, which I think is honestly fair. Uh, that's funny. Which I guess from a logic perspective, uh, that seems accurate. Like, um,
Mhm. Could be a reward. I will reward you by not doing something bad to you.
or like
Oh,
if you do something bad, you get paid in something that you think is bad,
oh yes. Like you receive punishment for your wages.
where like the punishment or the payment is the punishment, I guess would be the way to put that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You think we can read these next several couple paragraphs?
Down to very true.
Think a little bit further. Oh yes, Glaucon do you prefer? I see where it was. Yeah, that should be good.
So down to then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll finish us off then. He continues, "What do you mean, Socrates?" said Glaucon. "The first two modes of payment are intelligible enough, but what the penalty is, I do not understand, or how a penalty can be a payment." Oh wait, we just had a conversation about this. That's funny. You mean that you do not? So Socrates replies, "You mean that you do not understand the nature of this payment, which, to the best man, is the great inducement of the to the rule to rule. Of course, you know that ambition and avarice are held to be, as indeed they are, a disgrace. Very true. Uh, and for this reason, I said, money and honor have no attraction for them. Good men do not wish to be openly demanding payment for governing, and so to get the name of hirelings. nor by secretly helping themselves out of the public revenues to get the name of thieves, and not being ambitious, they do not care about honor. Where, Wherefore necessity must be laid upon them, and they must be induced to serve from the fear of punishment. Whoa. Uh, and this, I imagine, is the reason why the forwardness uh, to take office, instead of waiting to be compelled, has been deemed dishonorable. Now, the worst part of the punishment is that he who refuses to rule is liable to be ruled by one who is worse than himself. And the fear of this, as I conceive, induces the good to take office, not because they would, but because they cannot help, not under the idea that they're going to have any benefit or enjoyment themselves, but as the necessity, and because they are not able to commit the task of ruling to anyone who is better than themselves, or indeed as good. For there is reason to think that if a city was composed entirely of good men, then to avoid office would be as much an object of contention as to obtain office is at present. Interesting. Then we would be plain proof. Then we should have plain proof that the true ruler is not meant by nature to regard his own interest, but that of his subjects. And everyone who knew this would choose rather to receive benefit from another than to have the trouble of conferring one. So far, I am so far I am from agreeing with Thrasymachus that justice is the interest of the stronger. This latter question need not be further discussed at present, but when Thrasymachus says that the life of the unjust is more advantageous than that of the just, his new statement appears to be of a far more serious character. Which of us has spoken truly, and which sort of life, Glaucon, do you prefer?
Huh. Interesting. So if good people are not motivated by money or honor, then they must pursue ruling or taking office to avoid a worse person taking office. And it would be a reluctant pressure of sorts.
Which I think that same sentiment has been, I think it might have been Ben Franklin, uh, or one of the founders, uh, or somebody in that circle that talked about how uh, the best rulers would be people that are reluctant or don't want to take office
Hmm.
because they don't have any, uh, I guess, additional ambitions that would be facilitated as a result of having power. Um, which I'll have to track down that quote and maybe bring it up in our next video. But I think that that same sentiment has been uh, brought up in more recent days. That of uh, good rulers being the ones that would rather not be the ruler, uh, and because of that, uh, they would be preferred to somebody who wants to rule because the ruling would be used as a tool rather than a weapon. And
Hmm.
I think to end it off, I'll unless you have any thoughts, I was going to read the question or the last couple of questions that Socrates poses, and then see what our audience has to say.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would add or would you like me to finish off with those two questions?
No, I think that's all.
Okay. So yeah, to conclude, and audience, please answer uh, this question if you're still here to the end, and if so, we greatly appreciate you. But yeah, to conclude, I'll just repose these questions again, which he says: which of us has spoken truly between Thrasymachus and Socrates, and which sort of life, Glaucon, do you prefer? And with that, we'll see you in the next one. See you next Thursday. Thanks for joining us through today's exploration. If this resonated with you, please subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Check the description and pin comment for extra resources. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.